My mother-in-law secretly invited my husband's ex-girlfriend to Thanksgiving dinner, and when I saw her sitting at our table, my heart sank, because I knew this was no accident. My name is Ryan Coleman and I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I work as a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm, and my wife Ashley teaches third grade at the elementary school down the road. We had been married for 4 years, and for most of that time, things were good. Not perfect, but good. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our little rituals like Sunday morning pancakes and Friday night movies. Ashley's mother, Diane, lived about 20 minutes away, and she had never been my biggest fan. She was polite enough at first, but there was always something underneath it, a coldness she tried to cover with tight smiles and backhanded comments about how Ashley could have done better for herself. I brushed it off for years because Ashley loved her mother, and I loved Ashley, so I tried to make peace with Diane even when it felt like she didn't want peace at all. What I didn't know was that Diane had never really let go of the idea that Ashley's high school boyfriend, a guy named Trevor, was the one who got away. Trevor had moved to Chicago for a while, but he had recently moved back to Columbus for a job, and Diane had reconnected with him through a family friend. I had no idea any of this was happening. I just thought Thanksgiving was going to be a normal family dinner like every other year. The week before Thanksgiving, Diane called Ashley to talk about the menu, the seating, who was bringing what dish. Everything sounded ordinary. Ashley mentioned that her mom seemed unusually excited this year, more than usual, and we both just assumed she was in a good mood. I should have paid closer attention to that detail, but hindsight always makes you smarter than you were in the moment. On Thanksgiving morning, we drove over to Diane's house with a pumpkin pie and a bottle of wine. The house smelled like turkey and cinnamon, and everything looked normal until we walked into the living room and I saw him standing there by the fireplace. Trevor, Ashley's ex-boyfriend from high school, the one she had dated for almost 3 years before we ever met. I felt my stomach drop, but I told myself maybe it was a coincidence, maybe he was just a family friend who happened to be there. Then Diane came rushing over with a huge smile and said, "Look who I ran into last month. Isn't this wonderful? I thought it would be so nice to have everyone together." Ashley's face went pale. She turned to me and whispered, "I did not know he was going to be here, I swear." I believed her, because I could see the shock in her eyes was real. But Diane's smile told a different story. She had planned this. Dinner started tense but polite. Trevor kept trying to make small talk with Ashley about old memories, old friends, old inside jokes that I had no part of. Diane kept steering the conversation back to Trevor's new job, his new house, his recent breakup with his own girlfriend, as if she was building a case for something. At one point Diane said, "You two used to be so happy together, do you remember prom night?" And Ashley's jaw tightened. I tried to stay calm, telling myself this was just an awkward dinner, nothing more. But then Diane looked directly at me and said, "Ryan, you don't mind Trevor being here, do you? We're all adults." The way she said it wasn't a question, it was a challenge. I said, "Of course not, the more the merrier," even though every part of me wanted to ask why nobody had told me he was coming. After dinner, while Ashley was in the kitchen helping her mom with dishes, Trevor cornered me near the hallway and said, "I know this is weird, man, but Diane insisted I come." She said Ashley and I never really got closure. I asked him what that meant, and he just shrugged and said, "You'd have to ask her." I went into the kitchen to find Ashley crying quietly by the sink while Diane stood beside her saying, "I just thought it would be healthy for you to see him again, to know you made the right choice." Ashley snapped back, "You had no right to invite him without telling me, Mom, this is my marriage." Diane's voice turned cold and she said, "I only want what is best for you. I always have." The tension in that kitchen felt like it could crack the walls. I stepped in and said, "Diane, I think it's time Trevor left." Diane turned to me with a fake sad smile and said, "Ryan, don't make a scene, it's Thanksgiving." I looked at her and said, "You made the scene the moment you invited him without telling either of us." The room went silent. Ashley wiped her eyes and nodded at me, silently thanking me for saying what she couldn't. Diane looked wounded, like I had attacked her, but I knew this wasn't about hurting her feelings. It was about protecting my marriage from a woman who never respected the boundary between mother and matchmaker. The rest of the night unraveled quickly. Trevor left awkwardly, mumbling apologies that meant nothing since he had known exactly what he was walking into. Ashley's older sister, Megan, arrived later and immediately took Diane's side when she heard a summarized version of events. Megan said, "Mom was just trying to bring old friends together, you're overreacting, Ryan." I felt my frustration rising because nobody seemed to understand that this wasn't about Trevor showing up, it was about the intention behind it. Ashley tried to explain to her family what had really happened, but Diane had already spun her own version, telling relatives that I had caused a scene and embarrassed everyone in front of guests. Suddenly I was the villain in a story I never chose to be part of. Ashley's father, usually quiet, even pulled me aside and said, "Maybe you handled that a little harshly, son." I felt completely alone, like the one person who tried to protect his marriage was being punished for it. That night, driving home, Ashley didn't say much. I could tell she was processing everything, caught between loyalty to her mother and loyalty to me. I finally asked her, "Do you believe me that this wasn't some overreaction?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I know what my mom did was wrong, but she's still my mom, and it's hard for me to accept that she would do something this hurtful on purpose." I understood her pain, but I also needed her to understand mine. I told her, "I'm not asking you to cut your mother off, I'm asking you to see clearly what happened tonight and stand with me, not in the middle." For the first time, I felt like our marriage was being tested in a way it never had before, not by an outside threat, but by whether Ashley would choose to protect what we built together over the comfort of pretending her mother's actions were harmless. Over the next few days, I gave Ashley space to think, but I also made a decision of my own. I decided I would no longer pretend everything was fine just to keep peace with Diane. I called Diane directly and said, "I know you think what you did was innocent, but you invited a man into your daughter's marriage without her knowledge, hoping something would happen. That is not innocent, that is manipulation." Diane tried to deny it, saying I was reading too much into a simple reunion, but I told her calmly, "I'm not angry because Trevor exists. I'm angry because you tried to create a moment that could have broken my marriage, and you did it on purpose." For the first time, Diane didn't have a quick comeback. I think somewhere underneath her denial, she knew I was right. 3 days later, Ashley came to me and said, "I talked to my mom again, and I told her that if she ever does something like this again, I will limit how much she gets to be part of our lives." I felt something in my chest loosen, like I could finally breathe again. She continued, "I'm sorry it took me a few days to see it clearly, but you were right, she crossed a line that she has never had the right to cross." We spent the following weeks rebuilding trust, not because our marriage was broken, but because it had been tested by someone who should have supported it instead of threatening it. Diane eventually apologized, though it took months before her apology felt sincere rather than strategic. Trevor moved on with his life, and thankfully, he never tried to insert himself into our lives again. Looking back now, I understand that the real betrayal wasn't Trevor showing up. It was Diane deciding that her own unresolved feelings about her daughter's past mattered more than her daughter's present happiness. Ashley and I are stronger now, not because nothing bad happened to us, but because we chose each other when it would have been easier to let confusion and family pressure pull us apart. Every Thanksgiving since then, I remember that dinner not with anger, but with gratitude, because it showed me exactly who would stand beside me when it mattered most.